Hi there. So my name's Peter Bray, and I am just recording a quick review here for ADHD coaching, my almost 3-month experience with ADHD coaching, and specifically Expresso Coaching. In case it's helpful for you to hear about my experience with it. So let me start from a little bit of context. So I was diagnosed with ADHD. When the hell was that? February this year, and it's now October. And I went through a process of being diagnosed and then being titrated onto medication, specifically lisdexamfetamine, which is Vyvanse in the USA, and here in the UK it's called Elvanse. And long story short, skip to when I started with Expresso Coaching. It's actually because I was doing market research as a marketing consultant to look up what would it be like to take what I'm learning about being newly diagnosed ADHD, someone who's becoming aware of all these new possibilities and so on and so forth, and actually explore a potential niche for my clients as businesses, individuals, coaches, services, software, etc., who have specifically got the goal of helping people who have ADHD as their clients. I hope that makes sense. So what ended up happening was that I started doing the research and then saw David, the founder of Expresso Coaching, pop up, and he was one of the first people who I researched about this, and then was so intrigued by his approach and so on that I just booked a call with him, and then it was a great call. I felt like there was a ton of connection. I believed his genuine passion and enthusiasm and excitement for what he had discovered for helping clients, and so it sounded so great that I just jumped in and was like, great, actually this is something that I really need, which is partly why I was exploring it as a potential niche for myself. So that's how I started working with them, and that's my experience of talking to David. There were times where I was on the call aware that it was a sales call, but that didn't bother me because it, again, felt like it was coming from a really genuine, authentic, connected place. And I also really believed and felt like what was happening in that call was that he was genuinely very focused on, with a degree of impartiality, I'd say, is this someone who I would really be excited to work with us because I think it could be really helpful for them? Or is this not? And I very palpably got the sense that that was a process that he was following with integrity to how that looked like and felt for him. So basically all that's to say, if he didn't on that call and in that conversation think that this was a very exciting thing that would probably result in a great review or great outcomes for me and therefore them, I got the sense that he would have just been like, cool, lovely chatting with you. Here's what I suggest exploring. I'm going to be honest, I don't think that this is really a particularly good or relevant thing for you to start paying for right now. So I think he would have just left it there. I think he would have just not even offered me something on the spot. But it felt like a great fit, which is why we were both excited and jumped in. So I was there for just under 3 months, and I say that past tense because I got married and went on honeymoon about 3 weeks ago. Woo! Best time of my life, all of it. And therefore was like, right, I'm going to press pause on this, which was very useful. David made it very clear from the get-go that that's something that when life events come up, you can do. And it was very easy to do. I just emailed him and he did that. And we've talked since then. And all of that side of things is very, very flexible, personable. It's not one of these things where you have to jump through hoops for them to stop taking your money because of life events or anything like that. I currently have the full intention of restarting with the Expresso Coaching service. So on that note, I think I will explain, in case you don't know exactly how it works. So the difference between Expresso Coaching and a lot of other ADHD coaching that intrigued me and felt like it was very relevant for me, because I had talked with and explored other options, other types of ADHD coaching. And the reason, I shall say, that I was starting to explore ADHD coaching full stop was because when I was diagnosed with ADHD, someone told me, the person that, whatever they're called, diagnosey person, had told me that what they would recommend as a course of treatment for me was, first, if I am interested in exploring medication, start there, and if that works or if that doesn't work, after that, explore ADHD coaching. And the reason that they suggested it in that order was because if I'm going to go on medication and if it's going to be helpful for me, then it's very likely that that would then amplify the effects of ADHD coaching. So there's a bit of a build order that they suggested, and it made sense to me, so that's what I did. As I've said, medication worked overall for me. It's not perfect, certainly not a silver bullet by any stretch of the imagination, but it felt beneficial to me and still does. More on that in another video. I shall not go down that rabbit hole here, but what happened was I felt like I had got to a place where I was like, cool, medications feels stable, but I could do with some more help and support. Specifically, what I wanted was some support with external structure. It may be familiar to you if you have ADHD or suspect that you may have ADHD, which I have a lot of thoughts on as a concept in and of itself. Another rabbit hole I shall not go down right now. But what I was really feeling like I wanted support with was that I had many, many great ideas, started them in a flurry of excitement, and very often found and felt like I was just waking up, like the film Memento, with Guy Pearce, Christopher Nolan film. I felt like I would just wake up months later and be like, oh, 3 months ago, I had a great idea to do this. I started it. I got this far. What happened? Where am I? Why did I stop? Why am I now finding myself in the middle of 3 projects later, another huge thing, another great idea, but what happened to that idea? Why have I not finished that? And now come to think of it, like, I had that idea, I started this project, I started that project. Where have they all gone? Why did I, what happened? I just felt like I would mentally blink and wake up months later after a blackout and just become aware of a graveyard of half finished, quarter finished, three quarters finished, 9/10 finished, most painfully, ideas that had just been abandoned somehow and not really remember why, and be like, I'm now thinking like this is a great idea that I should do. Why didn't I just carry on and finish it? So that was my experience. That was one of the main things that prompted me to be open to ADHD coaching help specifically. The idea was there'd be someone else who could be some sort of backstop, some sort of corrective or accountability focused individual who would say, hey, it sounds like you've kind of switched from doing what we've been doing for the past 3 weeks or 2 days or, week and a half. What's happening? We were working on this and you've made this much progress, and would you like to talk about what's maybe getting you to switch? I don't know, something like that. That was what was in my head. What I wanted was basically a solution that would mean that I would finish projects. So that brings me to what was most appealing about Expresso Coaching, Expresso ADHD coaching specifically, and why I jumped in after a single conversation with the founder, David, maybe on the day or the day after I came across them in the first place. So how coaching usually works is that either once a week or once every 2 weeks or once a month even, you have a hour-long coaching session with a coach. That coach can be wonderful. They can be really helpful. I've had various kinds of coaching before, not specifically ADHD coaching, but a lot of coaching, and unbeknownst to me, a lot of that coaching was actually me looking for help with the symptoms of ADHD that I was experiencing and struggling with. Again, video for another time to go into full detail about that. But what was different specifically, and what is different with Expresso ADHD coaching is, by the way, just a quick note, I do know that espresso with an X is not how you spell the coffee beverage espresso. I'm a huge coffee nerd, I will just put in here, and own a manual lever press espresso system, which I spend many, many happy hours a week playing with and pulling divine to pretty terrible espresso. Just to flag that in case you think I don't know how you say espresso. Expresso is what the name of this ADHD coaching company is, with an X, deliberately, because it's express. So, what's the difference with what they do compared to that normal 1 hour session a week, 2 weeks, month, etc.? Well, what they do differently is you get a session not every week, but every single day. So every day at a time that you have agreed and scheduled, for me it was 9 a.m. every single day, I would have a 6-minute phone call with my one dedicated ADHD coach. My coach was a person called Abby, and I hope still is when I come back. I think it will be. Abby is amazing, suits me really, really wonderfully well. David, on our initial call, said, I think you'll work really well with Abby. It's very clear, he made it very clear that if for any reason I had not felt like Abby was the best fit for me as a coach, then there were other options, and to just email him about that. And I 100% believe that would have been the case, and we would have tried different coaches until either found the right fit or had gone through their entire roster of coaches, which I have no idea how big it is, and decided to go our separate ways. So that 6-minute call seems ridiculous, and in some ways it kind of is. I will say, and I say this with some element of hesitation, that it usually went on a little over 6 minutes. My hesitation is that I never wanted to take the mick and go over the agreed parameters of the arrangement, but it was all in good faith from both sides. Abby had a conversation with me at one point saying, we're going over calls a little, so I'm going to start saying we're now in the last minute of the call, so before we finish, I'd love to, and then talk about the last thing that you do on that call. So the 6-minute call has a lot of structure, as you might imagine. The structure basically, for me, was talking about how yesterday went. What went well, what didn't go well, looking at the to-do list that you created together for yesterday. What did you do? What didn't you do? What came up for you? A 2 or 3 minute debrief of the previous day. So you're actively noticing and learning from your daily experience with someone else to digest how things are going and implement changes of direction where necessary. With Abby, we basically called it getting data. So a lot of what I was struggling with was that failure felt unbelievably intense and crushing. I was pretty brutal with myself when things didn't go to plan, and I held myself pretty brutally responsible for everything in a way that I would, after exploring this a bit, never do with someone else who either I care about or who I want to actually be productive for the long term. So we framed it together as every day, everything that we put on the to-do list is simply an experiment. It's a hypothesis, like a science experiment, where we have a hypothesis where if I put the goal that I'm going to do this, what happens? And then the first couple of minutes of the next morning's call is simply data harvesting about that experiment. No partiality, no kind of story, no kind of identity battering, self-flagellating self-criticism, which is a strongly prevalent feature of ADHD. I will have a slight tangent here. One of my question marks about the concept of ADHD, which is complicated, so please don't jump to conclusions about what I do or don't think about ADHD just from this little thing here. But a lot of people have a lot of strong inner criticism. That's not purely a feature of ADHD. And some might say, yes, but it's the intensity, it's the degree to which it affects your ability to actually function. And I would say, yes, exactly. And that is still very much not exclusive to people with ADHD. There are many, many responses to that, many of which I agree with. I do think ADHD is a thing. I don't think we have defined it anywhere near well enough. I don't think, from my personal experience going through diagnosis of ADHD, that the diagnosis of ADHD is remotely adequate or precise enough. I have many reasons for saying that. I certainly am not denigrating my own diagnosis or or the overall concept of ADHD, but I think there's an intense amount of conversation and further exploration and refining and improving definitions and diagnosis of it as a concept and as a condition. Tangent over. Classic. What was I saying? I was saying about framing the experience of success or failure as nothing more than impersonal data, and that being the first 2 to 3 minutes of the daily 6-minute call. So the next couple of minutes then becomes, what would you like to do today? What would be and generally I ended up with 3 to 5 tasks that I wanted to do over that day. And then what Abby would do was put them in a WhatsApp poll. And what that would mean is that I could then click that poll, tap that poll for each of those tasks to show that I had done them, or leave them undone. And that would help both of us to very quickly be able to see at a glance my progress about that day's intended activities. So there's a lot to potentially say about all of that process, but I think that's pretty straightforward as is. The last bit of the call after doing all of that would always be Abby saying, okay, so if tomorrow at 9 o'clock we speak and I ask, how did yesterday go? And you have done, and then she would say all of the things that I just agreed or come up with, and we'd put down as the intended task list for that day. So she'd go through all of those, wash the car, write an email to so-and-so, do an application for XYZ, go to the gym, spend 10 minutes just catching up with your partner with as much attention as you can, it being present. For example, if you did all of those things and we'd speak tomorrow at 9 o'clock, how would that feel? And then I would reply with how that would feel, imagining how that might feel. That would do a bunch of lovely things for my brain and send me off really liking the idea of having that conversation in that way and feeling those things again at 9 o'clock the next morning. So that's what the idea of the 6-minute daily call is. So you might think, yeah, but like you could just have a bunch of disconnected daily intentions. How does that solve the whole long-term project continuity that you were talking about? Excellent question. On the call with David and the first call with Abby was a much longer, I can't remember exactly. I think it was between 20 minutes to 45 minutes. I'm pretty sure with Abby, She was very generous with her time and wanted to get us set up really nicely. So it was 45 minutes. I think that was just because she wanted to make sure that we were setting off on the right foot, and she extended the time generously. We talked about 3 monthly goals. So goals that I wanted to set for the next 3 months. 3 goals. And then we boiled those down to, in the next month, what would you want to get done that would mean a really good milestone if you were going to complete our 3 monthly goals. So the daily goals were nested in monthly goals, and the monthly goals were nested in a quarterly set of goals. That's a great system. It was great. I was learning a lot. I was also able to be really honest about how I was still feeling a lot of intense frustration and feelings of crushing disappointment when I felt like I had failed. And that's something that we were still working through. My honest thoughts in terms of what could be improved, or what was missing, or what I would have loved more of, would be to have a 10-minute call instead of 6 minutes. Then every week, to start and finish the week with a 20 to 30-minute call. And then what we did have, and this is with a VIP upgrade, what we did have was a once a month, again, I want to say 30-minute, but I think it was always longer than that, call to zoom out and get a what's called a VIP strategy session. So every month we had this like deeper dive thing into what was going on, what the progress was, and so on. So the only things that were missing in terms of what would make it absolutely perfect would be Monday and Friday, slightly longer than 6-minute calls, and the 6-minute calls to be 10 minutes. I've got a feeling that if they were 10 minutes, I would be saying I wish they were 15 minutes. You could probably assume that if whatever happens, I would probably have some constructive feedback where I'd say, yeah, if it was to be just that little bit more perfect, it would be, and then I'd up the time, basically. I'd up the time and the contact and so on until my ultimate version would be to have my coach in my house following me around doing everything for me. So I would take with a pinch of salt what I've just said about what would make it even better, to some degree. A pinch of salt, not a fistful of salt. I think there would be some merit in just slightly longer sessions, maybe just even once a week. With that said, the price I paid, I got a lovely deal. I hope I remember the price accurately. $450 a month. I might have that wrong, so don't quote me on that. And that's because I was really keen to sign up on that first conversation with David, which I'm really glad that I did. It might not be dollars, it might be pounds. I can't remember. But something about that in one of those currencies, as opposed to what would have been 550. So fast sign up, bonus. You may have opinions about that. It worked great for me, but I would understand any criticisms of that, specifically for people who can't really actually afford it, but feel the pressure to do it anyway, just because they're worried about, losing out, missing out, etc. So I would say that that's how much it cost. I think that was great value, especially and specifically because of the monthly longer calls. I don't think it's unfair that they don't give you a longer weekly call within that price. Maybe there would be a reasonable mutual benefit of that because it would exponentially increase and improve the results that their clients get, at which point everyone wins. They want better case studies. You want better value and impact and results for yourself. I don't know. I think there would be always something that you could say more. At the end of the day, they've got to draw the line somewhere and pay for the coach's time. I think the long monthly strategy session plus the daily, Monday to Friday, I should add, not Saturday and Sunday as well, the daily 6-minute calls plus the monthly slightly longer calls, plus the flexibility, the non-hardcore call gets shut down as soon as you hit 6 seconds, plus the ability to just email David and say, hey, here's what's going on for me. I would give this a double thumbs up for anyone who is thinking about giving it a spin. Like everything, it's not a silver bullet. I think part of me was thinking I would get an instant personality transplant to be the super duper productive, perfect entrepreneur that we all have the fantasy of being. What I discovered instead was that over the period of that almost 3 months, I ended up being far more in attunement and acceptance for the truth of who I actually am and where I am now and what I'm actually like, which was a very novel experience for me and a very cathartic and extremely positive development. I learned a lot of awareness about what I'm actually like, what works, what doesn't work, how I am actually being with myself. And by that, I mean literally, we ran experiments a lot of days on how I can respond to the voice of criticism in my head. That's one of the main things that we did pretty much every day. And because of having the daily calls, I did that pretty consistently for about 3 months. That's wild. I struggled to do many things consistently for a period of three months. So there was a huge net gain from working with Abby and Expresso Coaching. If it sounds like it's relevant for you, I would give a huge double thumbs up. I think I'm going to review some more things that I have tried to help with my ADHD diagnosis related experience of life, symptoms. I may come across a better rating system than saying double thumbs up. If I think about what rating I would give it out of 10, which I think is in a way better and also worse than saying double thumbs up, then I would give it a 7.5 out of 10. 7 feels unjust. 8 feels probably pretty good. So yeah, make of that what you will. My name's Peter Bray. You can find out more about my current endeavors and marketing consulting experiments at peterbraymarketing.com. You can see what I'm currently up to, what I've currently got running and going on, if you so wish to. I would suggest that if you're interested in finding out about marketing from my point of view, you reach out to me. And just to clarify what my point of view with marketing is, I've been a professional classically trained actor for 16 years. I trained at the Royal Central School of Speech and Drama from 2006 to 2009, had a whale of a time, was lucky enough to come out of there, one of the top classical actor training institutions on the planet, with an agent, and have a wonderful career as a mostly classical stage actor, doing a lot of Shakespeare and similar classical things. I also did a bit of telly, and for the past 8 years, I've also been a marketer and entrepreneur, starting up loads of side hustles alongside my acting career. Probably longer than 8 years, actually, if I'm being honest. And I also ended up becoming a freelance writer on the side of my acting career, and then copywriter. Ended up being a chief marketing officer for an agency, somehow completely burnt out at the beginning of this year, just before being diagnosed with ADHD. And very much my journey to come back to what my perspective on marketing is, has come back to how do you get back to the marketing and sales that feels really good, that feels exciting, that feels aligned, that feels connected, as opposed to the version that feels dirty, tedious, heavy, a necessary evil, just a brutal, never-ending to-do list, or a treadmill, or something that requires you to disconnect from yourself and to become something that just feels a bit icky. So really, a great way to say that for me at the moment is that what do you need to do? How do you need to be for marketing to just come down to this? I've got something that I offer that I think is really important and exciting for what it can do in the people's lives that it's for. And the marketing, all that is how do I let other people taste how important and exciting it could be for them in their lives. That's all marketing. That's all I want marketing to be for me. So there it is. If you'd like to know more, you can reach out, go to peterbraymarketing.com, or find me on LinkedIn, pretty good platform to check out, or send me an email at peter@peterbraymarketing.com. Thanks. Let me know if you have any questions or suggestions. This is the first time I've done a review video, and I've enjoyed it. So I think I'm going to review some more stuff that I'm trying out on my journey with ADHD. And yeah, if you're interested, follow along, and I'll catch you in the next one.